addresses. Mr. Peter Shield will address the Council on Public Accounts Committee Report number 78 and 79. Mr. Peter Shield. President, on behalf of the Public Accounts Committee, that is the PAC, I now submit to the Council PAC reports number 78 and 79, the scope of which covers the chapters under reports number 78 and 79 of the Director of Audit, as well as the administration's follow-up actions on recommendations made in previous PAC reports. Having studied the above reports of the Director of Audit, the PAC decided to hold public hearings in relation to 3 chapters with more pervasive issues. They are Chapter 2, Licensing Services for Drivers, and Chapter 3, Management of the Development of at Anderson Road Project in Report number 78, and Chapter 1, Continuing Education Fund in Report number 79. The PAC reports submitted today only cover 2 chapters, that is Licensing Services for Drivers and Continuing Education Fund. The PAC is still following up on the management of the development at Anderson Road project. A supplementary report will be submitted in due course. And I'll briefly explain the conclusions arrived at the public hearings and the recommendations made in the reports. On the chapter, Licensing Services for Drivers, the PAC's major concern involves driving tests for non-commercial vehicles. In relation to written tests, the PAC expresses serious concern that the Transport Department has not updated the relevant question banks between August 2000 and September 2020. The Transport Department is urged to establish a mechanism to update the question banks in a regular and timely manner so as to ensure that candidates fully understand legislations related to road safety. On road tests, the Director of Audit's report points out that between year 2015 and 2021, the waiting time for road tests of private cars and motorcycles at various test centers increased by 30 to 284%, while the number of test centers with an utilization rate of under 80% increased from 5 in 2015 to 7 in 2019. The PAC expresses serious concern over the situation and considers it unacceptable. Besides, the Transport Department conducted a review on the duty reporting arrangement for driving examiners in year 2019. The PAC is disappointed that the arrangement wasn't streamlined so that the time saved can be used for conducting more road tests to address the unduly long wait. The Transport Department is requested to conduct another review on the duty reporting arrangement for driving examiners and report the findings to the PAC. The PAC also recommends the Transport Department to set new performance pledges in relation to road tests for the public's reference and collect data to study whether measures should be taken to ensure that candidates have undergone sufficient driving training before taking a road test, so as to reduce the number of retests and enhance road safety. On the chapter of Continuing Education Fund, the PAC notes that the Labour and Welfare Bureau is responsible for the supervision of the fund's operation. The Working Family and Student Financial Assistance Agency, that is the WFSFAA, for its administrative work, and the Hong Kong Council for Accreditation of Academic and Vocational Qualifications, or the HKCAAVQ, for providing advisory service for the fund and monitoring the quality of courses. The PAC expresses serious concern over the LWB's failure to supervise the HKCAAVQ's inspection work. In particular, the LWB would be charged a standard service fee on surprise inspections conducted, whether they are successful or not. The PAC recommends the LWB to review its service agreements with the HKCAAVQ to rectify any unreasonable clauses. The PAC expresses serious concern over the insufficiencies in the WFSFAA's inspections on course providers. The LWB is recommended to conduct regular reviews on the operation model and number of inspections performed by the WFSFAA and the HKCAAVQ, with a view to improving the efficiency of inspection work. The PAC notes that the LWB will conduct joint inspections with the 2 bodies and has requested a report from the LWB on their efficacies. Besides, the PAC expresses grave concern over the WFS-FAA's failure to discover breaches of the fund's terms and conditions during its inspections on course providers. In particular, some course providers promoted reimbursable courses as a means of paving the way for immigration, which was not compatible with the aim of the fund. The PAC strongly recommends the LWB and the WFS-FAA to step up inspection and take appropriate regulatory actions and to include guidelines and requirements in relation to national security in the fund's terms and conditions. The PAC also strongly recommends the LWB to enhance the operational efficiency of the fund by better utilizing information technology. This will enable efficient supervision of the work performed by the WFS-FAA and the HKCAAVQ and provides a one-stop online service platform for applicants where course providers can submit application and supporting documents to register their courses by electronic means. Finally, I offer my gratitude to members of the PAC for their contribution, as well as witnesses in hearings for testifying before the PAC. I also thank the Director of Audit and his team for offering their unlimited support. Thank you, President.
Questions. Question 1, Ms. Nixie Lam. It has been reported that the COVID-19 epidemic has dealt a heavy blow to Hong Kong's aviation industry, resulting in the substantial loss of manpower in the industry. Some members of the industry have relayed that with the relaxation of anti-epidemic measures in various places, the demand for air transport is expected to increase rapidly, and the manpower succession issue in the industry will become more severe. Such situation will not only affect the supply of outbound flights, but also make it difficult to meet the requirements placed upon Hong Kong in the context of overall development of the country, such that it would endanger our important status as an international aviation hub. In this context, will the government inform this council, one, whether the authorities know the manpower demand and supply of various jobs in the industry, including the total number of employed persons in 2022 and the number of job vacancies, whether they've assessed if available manpower is sufficient to meet the demand arising from the resumption of growth in passenger and cargo flights. 2, of the supporting measures implemented by the government to assist the industry in solving the manpower shortage problem and the respective effectiveness. And 3, given that some members of the industry have relayed that some job types in the industry, such as pilots, aircraft maintenance engineers, runway maintenance personnel, and air cargo load masters are facing acute shortage of manpower, whether the authorities will consider including the jobs in the talent list of Hong Kong and importing the aforesaid types of workers at the or below the level of technician under the supplementary labour scheme as short-term measures to solve the manpower shortage problem. If so, the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Mr. President, Hong Kong is an international aviation hub. In view of the severe impact of the pandemic on Hong Kong's aviation industry, the government and the Airport Authority Hong Kong (TMHK) respectively rolled out various relief measures during the pandemic in support of the industry. The government also continued to fully support the Airport Authority of Hong Kong in implementing the 3 runway system project and other projects under the Airport City Vision in order to boost the competitiveness of Hong Kong International Airport. Since the government relaxed inbound control measures, passenger throughput of Hong Kong International Airport has been recovering steadily. As of January 2023, air traffic movement and passenger throughput have respectively recovered to 50% and 35% of pre-pandemic levels. With the cancellation of the vast majority of the inbound travel measures, as well as the full resumption of normal travel between Hong Kong and the mainland, we believe that Hong Kong's aviation industry will continue to recover, and the manpower demand in the industry will rise accordingly. In response to the 3 parts of Ms. Lam's questions, my reply is as follows. 1. During the pandemic, the manpower level in the aviation industry decreased with the plunge in Hong Kong's air traffic volume, which has led to the manpower shortage facing the industry now. In light of this, the Chief Executive, in the 2022 policy address, tasked the Transport and Logistics Bureau to review the labour shortage situation in the transport sector, including the aviation industry, and draw up solutions. In this connection, the government has been liaising with the aviation industry to understand their views and needs. According to the rough estimate of the Airport Authority Hong Kong in the end of 2022, there are about 53,000 people working at Hong Kong International Airport. In order to have a better grasp of the manpower situation in the airport community, the AAHK is now conducting a fresh round of airport manpower survey, which is expected to be completed within this quarter. After consolidating the views of the industry and reviewing the results of the survey, the government will, in association with the AAHK, consider the feasibility of various options with a view to coming up with relevant measures in the second half of this year so as to drive the sustainable manpower development in the aviation industry. 2. In face of the manpower shortage in the aviation industry, in order to maintain the competitiveness of Hong Kong International Airport amid the recovery of the aviation industry, the government has been maintaining close dialogue and cooperation with the AAHK and the industry, with a range of measures taken to relieve the short-term pressure on manpower within the industry. In terms of recruitment and staff deployment, the AAHK has cooperated with the Labour Department and workers' unions respectively in organizing job fairs for the airport. Such recruitment activities will continue in the coming months. In addition, the AAHK rolled out a staff pooling pilot scheme in December 2022, whereby the AAHK arranges a small team of staff whose ramp support service can be hired by airport operators when they are short-staffed. The AAHK will consider expanding the scheme to cover other job types in the future. With regard to improving airport staff's benefits, apart from extending temporary measures under the public transport fare subsidy scheme as announced earlier, the government has also been encouraging public transport operators to offer concessions to eligible airport staff. On the other hand, the AAHK has constructed the Hong Kong International Airport Community Building for the airport community, with the restaurant, preschool, fitness center, and other facilities therein opening in phases to increase the attractiveness of working at HKIA. Furthermore, the AAHK will implement other measures that will leave the airport community with more financial resources for hiring and improving staff's remuneration packages, including extending waivers and concessions of some airport fees. The government is also exploring with AAHK ways to help and encourage the aviation industry to hire more and retain staff, such as improving transport arrangements for staff and providing financial incentives. As for medium to long-term manpower issues, AAHK has been proactively introducing innovation technology to relieve the manpower shortage, such as using autonomous tractors for baggage delivery and rolling out flight token to allow passengers to pass through various airport checkpoints through facial recognition. On training, the Hong Kong International Aviation Academy, or the Hong Kong IAA, provides various aviation-related training courses. In addition, the government is also expanding the eligibility criteria of and relaxing the employment requirements on graduates benefiting from various training and incentive schemes supported by the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, with a view to encouraging more young people to enroll in aviation-related training courses or professional programs for their career development, or for attracting new blood for the aviation industry. Besides, to nurture more young people to join the aviation industry in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area as a whole, the HKIA will, in collaboration with the relevant aviation training institutions in the mainland, launch the Greater Bay Area Youth Aviation Industry Internship Program, whereby students from Hong Kong and the mainland will be posted to Hong Kong International Airport and other airports in the Greater Bay Area respectively for internship, thereby helping to support the long-term manpower development of the industry in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. The program will be launched in the first half of 2023. Part 3. The talent list of Hong Kong aims to attract high-quality professional talents that are most needed in Hong Kong in the immediate to medium term for the development of Hong Kong's economy. As far as pilots are concerned, to safeguard local pilots' employment opportunities and encourage local airlines to train cadet pilots, we consider that the existing market availability test under the General Employment Policy should continue to apply to pilots so as to align with the government's policy of nurturing local aviation talents. As for workers at or below the level of technician, The government appreciates that some aviation industry practitioners have suggested importing labor from other parts of the Greater Bay Area to meet the manpower need on the airport front line. The government will listen to and carefully consider suggestions from the industry, the AHK, and other relevant stakeholders. For all proposals involving importation of labor, the government will consider the actual need of the industry and the impact on the local labor market with a view to striking a balance between them. Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Nixie Lam. Thank you, Mr. President. Just now, the Secretary gave a reply. I thank the Secretary for promising that a survey will be conducted in the first quarter of this year. However, it seems that all these are stopgap measures. Now, we are the international aviation hub. The aviation industry is also in a leading position in driving economic growth and revival of other industries. Now, according to the government, the manpower shortage issue will be issued. Will the government consider conducting a pilot in the closed area of the airport so that in the first quarter of 2023, labor will be imported on an appropriate scale to relieve manpower shortage on the airside of the airport? Sustainability of local aviation industry's manpower is crucial to maintaining our status as an international aviation hub. As we embark on the path of recovery, apart from what is being experienced by our airports, other airports also face a similar manpower issue. This is the bottleneck for all. We'll continue to liaise with the industry and stakeholders so as to roll out different measures to relieve the manpower shortage in the industry. We've heard the industry loud and clear. Now, since that location is quite far away from the airport and that a lot of work has to be carried out at the airside, whether labor importation is possible. We've heard that view and we will explore this idea and other various options with the AAHK so as to promote the sustainable development of manpower in the aviation industry. Mr. Zhao Xiuchong, there are recruitment difficulties at the Hong Kong International Airport. It has to do with the myopic thinking of the service contractors for the airport. When times are good, these operators rely on outsourced staff and staff on contract terms. They never consider the sense of belonging issue. And that accounts for the major manpower shortage issue. The other cost is high transportation costs and long traveling time. Some meager concessions have been offered by bus companies, and still staff are required to pay some $50, $60 per trip. In many countries, airports are situated in a countryside, and often the airport provides free transport or even accommodation in the form of dormitories for airport staff, whereas the Hong Kong government has done nothing of the sort. The 3-1 runway system will be fully commissioned in 2024, and I believe by then there will be a substantial increase in the demand for manpower in the industry. Now, my question for the government is whether the government will demand transport operators to provide better concessions for airport staff, or even allow them to travel free of charge. Will the government subsidize the fares so that airport staff can travel to and from work for free? Secretary, I understand that some bus companies and the MTRCL have been offering fare concessions to eligible airport staff, and the honourable member just mentioned the different options. For example, whether the government will demand service operators to provide free transport to the airport, to the staff at the airport. We'll definitely explore this option with airline companies and service operators at the airport, especially taking into account the special operational mode of the airport. The airport operates round the clock. Some staff may not travel during normal peak hours. So we'll definitely explore this option with transport operators. And in the Chief Executive's Policy Address 2022, the public transport fare subsidy scheme has been extended for 6 months, so that eligible airport staff will be given 1/3 discount for the fares, which will help alleviate their financial burden. We will continue to explore with the industry and the operators different fare concessions options as a means to attracting and retaining manpower. Ms. Doreen Kong. The Secretary mentioned in his reply that the Airport Authority Hong Kong is conducting an airport manpower survey. I think this has come by too late, because ultimately we all knew that the airport would be in full operation soon, and the Hong Kong International Airport plays a pivotal role to maintaining Hong Kong's status as an international aviation hub. So why didn't the Secretary conduct manpower survey or projection well beforehand and be fully prepared for the recovery of the industry? It's been 3 years since the start of the epidemic, and you may recall that in the beginning, we all considered whether the epidemic would be as short as the one we experienced in 2003 SARS, or whether it would take a longer time for Hong Kong to recover. Now, regarding the airport's operation over the past 2 years, I wouldn't call it a standstill, but the operations were severely hampered. And then towards the end of last year, there were signs to show that the epidemic was ebbing and the airport operations would gradually resume. And we believe that if the manpower survey is conducted after that, we will have a better grasp of the full picture, including the brain drain and the manpower demand. There are about 53,000 people working at the Hong Kong International Airport as of the end of 2022. That's the figure we have. But I believe if we conduct another round of airport manpower survey now, we'll have a better grasp of the full situation. It won't take long. We'll complete the survey within this quarter. And we're now in the process of exploring different options with the TMHK and the industry so as to supplement manpower as quickly as possible. Dr. Kennedy Wong, do you have a question? Oh, no, Mr. Yu Pak Lau. Thank you, Mr. President. In the Secretary's main reply, he's told us that there are 53,000 people working at the Hong Kong International Airport, but he doesn't tell us exactly the shortfall and the demand in the future. In 2024, the 3-runway system will be fully commissioned. As we resume normal travel with the mainland and other parts of the world, we can envisage an acute shortage of manpower starting in the 4th quarter of last year. Right, Mr. Yu Pak Lau, please put away your mobile phone. Starting the 4th quarter of last year, some airline companies wanted to have additional flights and additional routes. So we're talking about manpower shortage for pilots, aircraft maintenance, as well as ground staff. Many airline companies now experience a lot of difficulties as they strive to resume more flight destinations and departures. Now you have medium to long-term measures. What about short-term measures? Are there ways to help airline companies resume their capacity? Because airliners form the upstream of the aviation industry, and it is very crucial to promoting the full recovery of the industry and the tourism sector as well. So are there short-term measures, short-term feasible measures to solve the manpower shortage problem? Secretary, thank you. In my main reply, I've set out a series of short-term measures to address the manpower shortage in the aviation industry. Now, Mr. Yu talked about airline companies and ground crew or air crew forms an important part of their manpower pool. And December 2022, the TMHK rolled out a staff pooling pilot scheme. In the handling of baggage or other ground operations, some service operators may have a manpower shortage issue. So having discussed with the airport authority, these service operators were able to engage a small team of staff. But of course, we're talking about just a small team. The service operators must have their own baggage staff, and this team is a centralized pool of staff who can supplement the existing staffing arrangements. And on the fare concessions, I think I've answered that question before. The other scheme we have is that the Hong Kong International Airport Community Building for the airport community has just been commissioned. There are facilities such as restaurants, childcare centers, and they will help attract and retain manpower.
Question 2, Honorable Shanghai Long. Thank you, Mr. President. The government earlier on promulgated the Hong Kong Innovation and Technology Development Blueprint to establish a clear development path for Hong Kong's innovation technology work. In this connection, will the government inform this council? First, given that the government has put forward a number of initiatives to compete for enterprises in the latest policy address, whether the Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau will strengthen collaboration with the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises in formulating development plans and set clear key performance indicators for development work so as to facilitate the Legislative Council and the public to monitor the implementation progress of development work. And second, whether in order to pull together more technology talents, the government will consider formulating a special mechanism with the mainland government to provide more facilitation measures for the future development of major I&T cooperation hubs, including Sentin, Technopole, and the Loop, such as allowing mainland I&T personnel who hold legal travel documents and need to commute frequently between Hong Kong and the mainland to adopt an approach of leaving early and returning late in traveling between the two places. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry. President, promoting The development of innovation and technology, I&T, is the work focus of this term of government. The government has promulgated the Hong Kong I&T Development Blueprint, the blueprint, at the end of last year to lay out the general directions and major strategies for Hong Kong's future I&T development in the coming 5 to 10 years from the perspective of a top-level planning. The blueprint has set down major policy suggestions under 4 broad development directions, including enhancing the I&T ecosystem, enlarging the I&T talent pool, etc. Having consulted the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, OASIS, in reply to the various parts of the question raised by Honourable Shang is as follows. First, in his 2022 policy address announced in October last year, the Chief Executive set the objective of promoting technology industry development through attracting enterprises and talents to Hong Kong, primarily focusing on industries in which we enjoy clear advantages and with strategic significance, such as life and health technology, artificial intelligence and data science, advanced manufacturing, and new energy technology. The goal is to attract not less than 100 high potential or representative I&T enterprises to set up or expand their businesses in Hong Kong in coming 5 years, including at least 20 top-notch I&T enterprises. The Innovation Technology and Industry Bureau, ITIB, is now making all-out efforts on this front. In collaboration with the office, OASIS, we have been contacting various mainland and overseas I&T enterprises from key industries to introduce the advantages and the latest development of the I&T industry in Hong Kong and invite them to set up their businesses in Hong Kong. Promoting the development of the technology industry requires the concerted efforts and collaboration of different stakeholders in the society. We'll bring the whole society together to attract business and investment, thereby achieving the goals set out in the policy address. ITIB and its departments, I&T parks that have close connection with the industry, such as the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, Cyberport, etc., will leverage the network of our various I&T stakeholders, assisting to outreach to enterprises from the mainland and overseas to tell the good stories of Hong Kong. The blueprint has set macro development targets for Hong Kong's I&T development in the coming 5 to 10 years and put forth reference development indicators covering research and development, startup, talent and industry development, etc. Different stakeholders can make reference to these targets and indicators in reviewing the implementation of the various strategies under the blueprint. We'll review the progress of various indicators periodically and brief relevant panel of the LegCo when appropriate. We'll also review the need to update relevant indicators in response to national planning, local and global economic and social development from time to time. Second, under the Northern Metropolis Development Strategy, the Sentian Technopole will provide about 240 hectares of land for I&T-related uses, including Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park of 87 hectares and other land around Sentian of 150 hectares. Together with the Shenzhen I&T Zone, it will form the Shenzhen Hong Kong Innovation Technology Cooperation Zone of approximately 540 hectares. Cooperation Zone for short, which can combine the strengths of both Hong Kong and Shenzhen in pulling together mainland and overseas talents and become an essential propeller for the development of an international R&T center in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, GBA. The target of the Sentian Technopole is to become an integrated community which can attract I&T talents and provide them with facilitation to work and settle. This will provide better support for Hong Kong's I&T development and attract mainland and overseas enterprises, research institutes, and higher education institutions to set up presence and open up new industries, thereby developing a stronger I&T platform and building a comprehensive I&T ecosystem and industry chain. Our country has all along been the strongest support for Hong Kong's I&T development. The government has been in close liaison with the relevant central government ministries and the Guangdong provincial government to actively explore measures to facilitate convenient cross-boundary flow of innovation elements, such as talents, materials, capital, and information, including actively providing facilitation to non-Chinese nationals residing in Hong Kong to travel to other cities of the GBA for business, research exchanges, and visits. Meanwhile, in order to jointly attract talents and investment to the cooperation zone, the governments of Hong Kong and Shenzhen signed a cooperation agreement in 2021 for the development of the cooperation zone and put forward a joint policy package covering support measures on facilitating flow of talents and scientific research resources and business development, etc. The Hong Kong government will continue to explore actively with the relevant authorities in the mainland measures facilitating cross-boundary flow of talents, in particular INT talents, working in the loop in the future. We will make timely announcements. Thank you, President. Honorable Shang Hailong. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank Professor Sun for answering my question. In the next 5 years, 100 high potential representative INT enterprises and 20 top-notch INT enterprises will be attracted. I do look forward to that. However, another part of my question hasn't been answered. I know that there is a cooperation zone to facilitate the flow of talents, and then there will be facilitation measures to enable the movement of talents. But then earlier on at the question session by the CE, he said that the loop area will become a pilot area to facilitate the flow of talents. However, in the Secretary's answer today, I have yet to see any progress. Can you give us more details, like a timetable, etc., in relation to the progress of the government's work in this area? Secretary. Mr. Shang would like to know about the movement of talents in the cooperation zone in the loop. I think you know that as far as the loop is concerned, we have still got the makeshift hospital against COVID-19. We have to. You may want to know whether we know how to deal with the facilities. Internally, we have already got a clear plan. We will return the site for the Kaplan Hospital to INT users. As to the positioning of the loop area, we have already been planning for it at a high level. It will be like an INT park. And then as to the third step, I think we have to make a start. That is to attract investment and enterprises so that the relevant enterprises will set up presence there. And then we will talk about the movement of talents. Currently, we have already taken up the matter with the mainland authorities. We have to explore ways to facilitate cross-boundary flow of innovation elements such as talents, materials, capital, and information. And not just talents, information, projects, etc. have to be facilitated in terms of their flow. So we are already acting on it in an orderly fashion. Thank you. Ms. Chen Yue-ming. Thank you, President. Regarding the Northern Metropolis Development Strategy, at the question session covering the 2022 policy address, I put the question to the CE directly. That is whether there will be facilitation measures at the Northern Metropolis in relation to immigration clearance. The CE has said that certainly that will be done so that there will be smooth clearance and close connection. In the Secretary's reply, he has also mentioned that there will be timely announcement about the facilitation of cross-boundary flow of talents. Can he not elaborate on this? Other than those in the cooperation zone, will other personnel be facilitated in the movement as well? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Chen, for her question. Now, for the SAR government, yes, we have already set up a committee to better integrate into the national development. We would like to have closer liaison and cooperation between the INT talents on the two sides. We would like to facilitate non-Chinese nationals residing in Hong Kong to travel to other cities of GBA for business, research, exchanges, and visits. And just recently, the Guangdong government has said that the INT and scientific researchers can be facilitated to come to Hong Kong. Instead of just 7 days, they can stay for no more than 30 days. Now, for the loop area, it will be a special zone within the special zone. In other words, there will be free exchanges and free interaction among the talents. Of course, we'll be planning for the cross-boundary transport and traffic arrangements. Thank you. Next, Professor William Wong. Thank you. Please put on your microphone. I'm sorry about that, Mr. President. Thank you, President. Secretary, in last year's policy address, it has been proposed that by having a $5 billion strategic I&T fund and by setting up the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, we should be able to attract not less than 100 high potential or representative I&T enterprises to set up or expand their businesses in Hong Kong in the coming 5 years. My question is, in relation to the strategic I&T fund, have you drawn up the details and have you considered using the fund to provide subsidies in relation to rental expenses, research, as well as talents? Professor Wong, as I have reminded other members, don't hold your mobile phone in your hand or put it away or get a mobile phone that will produce less interference. Secretary, thank you, President. Thank you, Professor Wong. By enriching the investment channels so as to boost the I&T development in Hong Kong, in particular supporting the development of startups, I think this is an important point. We have the co-investment idea. And as you have pointed out, we have the strategic fund, and we have also got the long-term growth portfolio, etc. Altogether, $62 billion will be available for investment. And we have also set up the limited company for investment last year. So because the government will take a direct role, the membership will be announced soon. Moreover, in order to attract enterprises and investment, we have already received quite a large number of proposals. All of them have been referred to the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises and Development Bureaus. I'm sure many of them will be realized. Now, in the course of attracting investments and enterprises as to how we can make better use of that fund to help, we have got a few principles. First of all, other than the strategic investment fund, we are saying that for those strategic areas that we have identified, we should provide more support. Say, for example, whether we can develop top-notch enterprises in the relevant sector and whether it can provide more job opportunities to our employees, in particular the young, and whether we can ride on our own advantage to support the science and technology development of our motherland. Dr. Lo Wai-Kuo. Thank you, Mr. President. Time and again, I have said that to develop I&T, there are two major elements. First, talents. Second, land. Recently, we have heard that for the SAR government, in terms of attracting talents and in terms of attracting leading enterprises to come to Hong Kong, we have made certain progress. But what about land? According to the main reply of the Secretary, he mentioned the Northern Metropolis. I'm afraid it would be too late. Therefore, we want to know more about this. That is, on the one hand, you are able to attract talents and enterprises, but on the other hand, we know that we have also got local talents. But what about land? What about land for enterprises? What about land for the accommodation needs of the talents? Thank you, Dr. Lo. I think you have highlighted the main points. Thank you for your questions. As I have said, there are two major elements for our I&T development. First, talents. Second, land. I'm glad to be able to tell Dr. Lo that for the current term government, bureaus and departments have been cooperating very closely in an enhanced way in terms of the usage of land. For the Development Bureau and ourselves, for the past 6 months, we have been working very closely, and they have been rendering a lot of support to us. Say, for example, the release of land available in the loop, the availability has been much advanced, including the Sentin Technopole. And then we are going to have the first batch of land available in the loop area this year. Next year, the first batch of land will be available in Sentin Technopole for investment in enterprises. Of course, we have also looked at the question of talents. For the loop area, yes, there are only 87 hectares, but then quite a substantial amount of land has been set aside for talents. And the same is true for Sentin Technopole. For the Science and Technology Park, we have already identified land for the second advanced manufacturing center, which has been requested by the park. And then for other areas of work, we are also embarking on them orderly. For us to have top-notch I&T enterprises to take a presence in Hong Kong, they also need land for the manufacturing process. We are working on it very actively. We would really want to have top-notch I&T enterprises. They may need a large area of land. We will try to cater for that. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, President. Well, for the blueprint, I know that we need land, we need the parks, and we need the talent pools. For the private enterprises, I think if they take part, then it can enhance the efficiency and play a complementary role to the government. President, may I ask the Secretary as to the public-private partnership, what sort of measures will be taken up for that purpose? Secretary. Thank you, President. Thank you, Mr. Yim, for his question. Between end of this year and early next year, in the loop area and in the Sentin Technopole, we are able to make available a batch of sites. We would like to have the whole society, including the private sector, helping us to develop the loop area and the parks, the I&T parks. We have got 8 blocks of buildings in the loop area. The plan won't change. And then other than the proper infrastructure, we would also like to have the greater participation of the private sector, and mainland and overseas top-notch enterprises would be welcome to come to the loop area as well as Sentin. And according to their needs, they can make use of the land in a reasonable way. The Hong Kong government has an open attitude. We also hope that the whole society will welcome this, and we hope that we can attract the overseas and mainland top-notch enterprises to come. Mr. Dominic Lee, thank you. The policy address first talked about the setting up of an office for attracting strategic enterprises, and it has been very popular among the members of the community, and it was well received in the media. But so far, we haven't been told about any progress. When we try to compete for talents and compete for enterprises, how come that we have yet to see any progress? How do we compare with Singapore? In what areas are we suffering from inadequacies? Well, for the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, we are coordinating different departments and bureaus. It has played a key role. Say, for example, in Hong Kong, if we would like to set up a major manufacturing line, there is the need for land, customs, environmental protection, etc., would all be involved. It takes more than one government department to deal with it. The Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises can coordinate the work. Well, as to the progress, well, we have been talking to the overseas investors and manufacturers. They may not know exactly what's happening in Hong Kong. So everybody, including government officials and the citizens of Hong Kong, should tell the good stories of Hong Kong so that others would know about what is happening in Hong Kong, and then they will be attracted to come to Hong Kong. Let's work together. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Thank you, President. The Secretary mentioned about the facilitation of high-end talents coming to Hong Kong and going back to the mainland. It's easy for us to make use of our home return permit to go to the mainland. Recently, we have received an announcement about the talent visas. They can stay for no more than 30 days. But I don't know whether they will still be regarded as a visitor or they can come in the capacity as a person doing research. In that case, I would suggest that, and I would think that it is a matter of getting a work visa. And for non-Chinese nationals residing in Hong Kong going to the mainland, again, they need a visa. Have you done anything about it? Secretary, thank you for this very specific and important question. The SAR government has an open mind about this. To attract the talents to come to Hong Kong, they can stay here for 30 days. They may be carrying out a specific project and they will earn some income. So we will need a very open attitude. They shouldn't be regarded as a traveler, a visitor. And then for our own residents, whether they can go to the mainland, stay for a short period of time, and make some profits or income. Again, we would like to have an open attitude about this arrangement.
Question 3, Honorable Lai Tong Kwok. President, it is learned that in 1998, the Hospital Authority (HA) started to provide remote video consultation service through video conferencing systems on a limited basis to a small number of elderly people living in residential care homes for the elderly, RCHEs. In this connection, would the government inform this council, 1, whether it knows if HA still provides the aforesaid consultation service at present? If HA does, of the number of consultations provided in each of the past 5 years, as well as the hospital clusters and hospitals providing the service. If not, the reasons for that. 2, as it is proposed in the 2022 policy address, the HA will make a wider use of telehealth services to improve patient experience. Whether the authorities have plans to extend telehealth services to more RCHEs. If so, of the details. If not, the reasons for that. And 3, as there are views that despite the publication of the ethical guidelines on practice of telemedicine and the related questions and answers by the Medical Council of Hong Kong, they're still unable to allay the concerns of the healthcare sector about the risks of bearing additional legal liability for providing telemedicine consultation services. Whether the authorities have studied the enactment of legislation on telehealth services so as to clarify the relevant legal liability issues, if so, of the outcome, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Health. Thank you, President. Thank you for the question from Mr. Lai. In consultation with the Hospital Authority (HA), our consolidated reply is as follows. The HA has been striving to optimize the use of technology to enhance service quality and patient experience, and telehealth is one of the key development directions. In recent years, the HA has actively promoted telehealth such that suitable patients can receive healthcare services from the HA without having to visit hospitals and clinics. Apart from providing telehealth services to COVID-19 infected persons during the pandemic, the HA has also introduced telehealth services in different specialty outpatient clinics, nurse clinics, and allied health services and outreach services. According to the preliminary statistics, the HA has delivered 83,000 attendance. On the other hand, community geriatric assessment teams of the HA, through regular visits to residential care homes for the elderly, provide medical and nursing care to elderly patients. And they also provide training to the carers. The CGATs will also provide medical and nursing care through telehealth to patients in accordance with the clinical needs and actual operations. Therefore, we have been providing this to the residents of our CHEs in all 7 clusters, especially in early 2020 with the epidemic setting on course. The services have been extended from April to December 2020. We provided 47,000 attendances through CGAT's telehealth services from April to December 2020, and we also extended the service to private and subvented RCHEs. The epidemic has been provided on a wider scale amid the COVID-19 epidemic. Individual private hospitals and medical institutions also provided telehealth support service for the public, so that the patients can get the necessary healthcare services without leaving home. This helped to relieve the overcrowded condition in hospitals and clinics. In the Policy Address 2020 delivered by the CE, it is proposed that we should strengthen telehealth services to improve patient experience. As such, we will progressively apply telehealth to various clinical services, including specialist outpatient consultation services. The HA is currently piloting telehealth services through HA Go mobile app and the clinical management system. And who are the suitable patients to receive this service? They are those who are in stable conditions, who do not require physical examination, and who are residing in Hong Kong. We are also aware that there are limitations of telehealth services, and it may not be applicable to all patients. For instance, for patients who require physical examination, such as taking blood sample and so on, that they may need to attend and visit a hospital. And also, some doctors who are not qualified to register as Hong Kong may be providing illegal services. The HA will regularly review the effectiveness, including the operation of such services, so that this is more cost-effective and provide quality service. On the other hand, we are exploring other opportunities for telehealth to serve useful purposes. Through the associated e-health supporting service, the government will further study the feasibility of providing this so as to make it more convenient for patients. As for guidance, to provide effective guidance for doctors, the Medical Council of Hong Kong issued the ethical guidelines on practice of telemedicine in December 2019, so as to make sure that they would follow all the ethical codes applicable to doctors. The guidelines cover general principles such as a doctor-patient relationship, keeping of medical records, etc. If doctors violate the guidelines, it may be a breach of the Medical Council discipline code, and disciplinary action may take action against them. The Medical Council also issued questions and answers to the guidelines in early March last year to inform doctors of the necessary service qualities that are required. Due to the COVID-19 epidemic, the number of citizens requiring medical support, especially through telemedicine, has increased sharply. We have also invited the Medical Council to introduce, to brief doctors of the contents of the guidelines and the stance of the Medical Council to address attendees' concern. Therefore, medical practitioners in providing telemedicine in Hong Kong would have to uphold the interests of patients, and also to assess the applicability of telemedicine according to the guidelines issued by the Medical Council. If necessary, we will continue to promote further development of telemedicine. Mr. Lai Chongguo. In the second part of the reply, the Secretary agrees that during the epidemic, COVID-19 epidemic, the telehealth services provide very good services to our CHEs and reduce congestion in clinics and hospitals. So would the government do more than just regular reviews? Don't make this an optional service. The government should set up a task force so that our residents of our CHEs will get a roadmap and a timetable for accessing the telehealth services in the future. Actually, HA is already providing some form of telehealth services. The community geriatric assessment teams would usually visit our CHEs to provide service. But there is already a telehealth service provided to our CHEs. And in the future, in terms of technology, application and development, this is the area we want to go further. And also, we would like to apply this to other patients. For example, if a patient is in a stable condition, then the regular consultation can be done through technology, through telehealth. And also, this may be applicable to the rehabilitation services. The HA has therefore set up a special team to look into this. Professor Chan Wing Kwong. Well, I think telehealth services can provide very good service to patients, especially those with mobility problems. And this would also be beneficial to Hong Kong as a whole. But this should be done comprehensively and not just offered by HA. During the COVID-19 epidemic, Chinese medicine practitioners also provided services to patients with good results. And when I offered telehealth services to our CHE residents, some of the elderly residents find it very difficult to use their mobile phone to access the consultation services. So would the government instruct or provide instruction to our CHE residents so that they know how to operate mobile phone apps and or iPads, so that they can find it easier to access telehealth services for Chinese medicine services? Professor Chen is right. We are grateful to the Chinese medicine practitioners who provided a lot of services to patients, especially our CHE residents. Actually, some Chinese medicine medical practitioners clinic also provide telehealth services. When the public use the application of mobile soft app for accessing the service, this is not difficult for most of them, but we have to be mindful of the privacy issues that we need to be careful about. For example, we have to keep confidential information secured. And also, this is also be kept through the e-health service. So telehealth service can be provided with the support of the e-health system. Of course, it's important to teach people how to use the relevant app or software, our CHEs in particular. So we would work with the RCHE care workers to make sure that the service recipient can use the computer software more easily. Mr. Edmund Wong, as the Secretary said, HA used HA Go, the mobile app, for this service. Would this telehealth service be extended to private hospitals and clinics as a means to promote public-private collaboration to alleviate the shortage of service in Hong Kong. Our public-private collaboration or partnership has been the focus of our promotion work. We of course want to make the e-health service, e-health record management system available to the private institutions. But private hospitals, in providing service to COVID-19 patients, already provide their own telehealth services. Well, we are concerned about how the record or the service can be connected to the e-health system. So we hope that private hospitals and clinics should make sure that their systems can be connected effectively with the e-health system. Mr. Michael Tin, well, telemedicine is the way for future development. Under the fifth wave of the COVID-19 epidemic, some doctors dare not visit residents, RCHEs affected by the epidemic. But we need to have good tools before we can be effective. According to these doctors, many RCHEs that do not have Wi-Fi service, they will have to rely on the mobile phone of the workers. Some have better cameras than others on their phone. And also they have some software which are a trial version, and it would be blocked after a certain period of trial. And therefore they have a different different specification of software required. So there's no standard requirements for the computer system. There's various requirements which are difficult to understand. So you need to make sure that people can learn their way forward. I know you are looking into this. Perhaps you can develop some software for telehealth services and provide it free of charge to the RCHEs. Mr. Michael Tim, please raise your question. My question for the administration is that whether the government would develop its own telehealth software so that the necessary software and hardware will be provided to RCHEs, including Wi-Fi and camera equipped with the necessary resolution standards. Well, we'll have to work with our colleagues. Our assessment teams, community geriatric assessment teams are very willing to instruct the RCHE workers on how to make use of the service. But usually the conditions of the patient in RCHEs are complicated. And then if we send somebody to visit the RCHEs, the nurse in question, we can then use his or her iPad so as to access the service. But I understand that the services have to be upgraded in future. Dr. Priscilla Leong, I know that 47,000 attendances have been made, and my family was among the beneficiaries of this service. But after the epidemic, after the phase of fighting the epidemic, many people are now used to this telehealth service, and they are highly appreciative of the quality. But in Hangzhou and Singapore, well, they can use the same service to prescribe medicine, and therefore they can focus on long-term planning because the confidence is there. My question is about licensing and training. Will the administration learn from the Singapore experience so that the telehealth service is a licensed service? That would be good for the insurance protection, insurance coverage, and that will provide better protection for the healthcare practitioners. apart from the software which enable the delivery of telehealth service, there are other services required, such as the delivery of medicine prescribed, and also the how we issue the sick leave certificate, for example, to the patient. For the 47,000 attendances, we're talking about RCHEs only. Actually, more than 500,000 attendances were made by the HA. As for the licensing of telehealth services, that's a very good suggestion. We'll look into this and see how we should proceed. Mr. Duncan Chu, well, I'm a member of the HA committee, and during the epidemic, the telehealth service saw great development, and many barriers were taken down in view of the emergency situation, and things that were impossible are now possible. For example, delivery of prescribed medicine within 24 hours. During the epidemic, some services were suspended, some were put under the review. In the mainland, they have a clearer direction on when telehealth services can be offered. For example, children and who should accompany these young patients. The Medical Council has issued some guidelines, ethical guidelines. I hope some more clarification can be made, such as the kind of illnesses that will be applicable, that should be used, when ethical, when telehealth services should be applicable. As this will be especially useful for Hong Kong patients living in the mainland. Secretary, well, the Medical Council's guidelines is just a framework, so that when they provide the telehealth services for the patients, how it can be done without violating the professional code. But actually, the sector has already got some consensus. And for example, the first consultation should preferably be made in person rather than through telehealth services. For primary healthcare workers, they all find these telehealth services very efficient and effective. But for cross-boundary healthcare services, that's another problem legally speaking. Hong Kong doctors, for example, is providing service to a Hong Kong patient in the mainland, and since the Hong Kong doctor is not licensed to practice medicine on the mainland, there will be a problem, and we must not violate any rules. So we would clarify with the sector on what we can do and what we cannot do.
Question 4, Dr. Ho Yi Lee. Thank you, President. In November 2022, the National Administration of Traditional Chinese Medicine promulgated the development plan for the informatization of traditional Chinese medicine during the 14th five-year plan period, putting forward the continuous promotion of an in-depth integration of traditional Chinese medicine TCM business with information technology and the facilitation of transformation and upgrading through the use of digitalization, network, and technology. On the other hand, the Hunan, Jiangxi, Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Traditional Chinese Medicine Industry Chain Collaborative Development Alliance was established in the same month on the promotion of the preservation, innovation, and development of TCM. In this connection, with the government informed this council, one of the initiatives of promoting the informatization of local TCM at present, two, whether it has conducted analysis on the progress of informatization of TCM in Hong Kong and the relevant situation on the mainland, particularly in the testing and scientific research and merchandise trading, and explore how collaborative development can be achieved on the mainland. 3, whether a development plan for the TCM industry is in place to explore how to capitalize on Hong Kong's strengths and enhance its cooperation with the mainland, including other cities in the
GBA, Greater Bay Area, in respect of the TCM industry? If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Thank you. Secretary for Health. Thank you, Mr. President. And I also thank Dr. Lee. Chinese medicine is an integral part of Hong Kong's healthcare system. The government has been committed to promoting the development of CM, or Chinese medicine, on various fronts, including policy and regulation, manpower training, research and innovation, CM services, and the CM pharmaceutical industry, with a view to giving full play to strength and functions of CM. Among others, the government has been encouraging the sector to enhance the use of technologies at different levels, to improve service quality, business efficiency, and industry development in the long run using technology. In relation to the informatization and digitalization of CM under the 14th five-year plan, it is about the standardization of terminology and high quality development of Chinese medicine. If we are to digitalize Chinese medicine for analysis and AI, we need to have sufficient data and a platform to collect the data. In the first place, we have to standardize CM technology so that it can be shared on a common platform. So it is an important part of informatization and digitalization of CM. We have been in close communication with the sector. We've set up a task group on standardization to develop CM clinical and CM drugs terminology tables. We have also drawn reference from terms used locally and on the mainland. Secondly, we need electronic platform for sharing. We have engaged the Hospital Authority to develop a clinical management software named EC Connect for administration and clinical management of CM clinics, and for the connection of these clinics with the electronic health record sharing system for sharing of clinical data. We will make use of a standardized CM terminology used in the electronic healthcare record system. We have the first Chinese medicine hospital. It is a new hospital using technology. In terms of pharmaceutical development, we focus on quality. We have the Government Chinese Medicines Testing Institute, GCMTI. It has developed a set of internationally recognized reference standards and testing methods for CM pharmaceutical products. By using technology and research to strengthen quality control, thereby establishing the brand image of CM drugs. Well, apart from various research projects on pharmaceutical identification studies, chemical markers, analysis and testing methods, the GCMTI will also make use of innovative application of data and resources. It's developing a digitalized CM drug information platform, including digitalizing physical CM drug specimens to create digital exhibits, and establishing the genetic traceability between CM drugs and their species or origins by scientific analysis. The work would provide the industry with comprehensive and professional information on drug identification, thereby enhancing identification capability on the cost of procurement of such drugs. And we have also participated in a study group with the mainland. So we will cooperate with mainland parties for the digitalization of CM drugs. So in relation to international exchanges and commissions, we have got the support of mainland ministries and commissions. Number of national institutes and organizations has been assisting GCMTI on the implementation of the Hong Kong Chinese Materia Medica standards. The GCMTI was also invited for the first time last year by the National Administration of Traditional Chinese Medicine to take part in the 4th Chinese Material Medical Resources Survey on resources in Hong Kong to dovetail the establishment of the national database. The GCMTI's CM Herbarium is also set up with the assistance of the National Medical Products Administration, and they've donated precious specimens of CM drugs for display. We are thankful for that. In addition, we've been working on the informatization of CM services, including the setting up of Chinese Medicine Development Fund to procure computer hardware, software, system of logistics management, transaction and distribution records. For over 40 certificates of license under the Chinese Medicine Council, we have launched the electronic application and licensing services. We have been leverage on the support of the mainland. Under the 14th five-year plan, we've been actively strengthening the Hong Kong's role in the construction plan for the Chinese medicine cluster in the GBA. For Hong Kong registered traditional proprietary Chinese medicine for external use, they can be registered and sold on the mainland. This will be helpful to Hong Kong PCM manufacturers to expand their markets and to go global. In the 2022 policy address, we said that we will work with the Chinese medicine sector to formulate a blueprint for the development of CM. We'll also map out short, medium, and long-term objectives and recommendations. One of the key issues is to look into the development of the industry, covering industry regulatory situation, development strategies to facilitate business and develop market. We will also deepen cooperation with the mainland, the GBA, and in the international community. We integrate into the national development. We will tap into our strength and strengthen our role as a gateway between Hong Kong, between mainland and the world. Thank you. Dr. Ho Yi Li, thank you. And I also thank the Secretary for giving us abundant information of their work, in particular, facilitation measures in the use of Chinese medicine in Hong Kong, as well as the work on setting reference standards. How can we commercialize the products and help the industry? We talk about working with the mainland and also informatization. This is conducive to setting standards for price setting as well as setting reference and standards. In this regard, what plans does the government have? Because I think this is the next step for industrialization as well as for commercialization. We need to set standards before we can set prices. This is indeed a very good question. We do need to set standards. For setting standards, we've just taken the first step. We have the GCMTI. They have been working on the Chinese material medical standards. In relation to price setting, we need to work with overseas counterparts and counterparts on the mainland. This is the next step. We hope that we will have a plan in the blueprint setting out the course of action in the short, medium, and long term. Mr. Chen Pui Leung, thank you. I'd like to ask the Secretary, currently, are there any regular Chinese medicine exchanges between educational institutions, schools, healthcare institutions between the mainland and Hong Kong? I thank the member for the question. There has been plenty of exchanges on Chinese medicine, apart from regular exchanges amongst sectors as well as universities. We also have constant liaison with the sector on the mainland. We have also many training sessions and exchanges. When a traditional Chinese medicine TCM practitioner graduates, we can sometimes they're asked to practice on the mainland and in Macau so that they can learn about the actual operating situation. In 2025, the Chinese Medicine Hospital will be commissioned. We need to step up our liaisons to serve the hospital. We are in close liaison with Chinese medicine on the mainland. Our country has sent a number of experienced Chinese medicine practitioners to give us advice in the setting up of the Chinese Medicine Hospital. There is also, in addition, plenty of researchers. So on top of governmental exchanges, there are also training and exchanges in the sectoral level. Dr. Wendy Hong, there is a huge demand for Chinese herbal medicine and Chinese medicine. The government said they've done a lot of testing work. We have international, we have advantages in logistics, in accreditation and other areas. Will we step up a transaction platform for Chinese medicine? This is indeed a very good suggestion. Hong Kong has strengths in these areas in Chinese medicine. In the development of Chinese medicine as an industry, these are our priorities. They will be incorporated in the blueprint. We will set out what good roles Hong Kong can play in the international community. We have regular exchanges with the mainland. We talk about exchanges and cooperations in order to tap into Hong Kong's strengths. Mr. Lee Chun-kang, for Chinese medicine as well as Chinese medicine services, they are intertwined. There are still limitations and difficulties in the practice of TCM practitioners. For informatization, Hong Kong TCM practitioners cannot be fully linked with e-health. If they want to know about test results and medical records of Western medicines, they will have to ask the patients. Some elderly patients are unable to answer, so there is a limitation. Just now, the Secretary talked about the imminent linking of e-health with Chinese medicine clinics. Do you have a timetable when they will be on the same position as Western medicine doctors? I fully subscribe to the members' views. Linking with e-health is important. Starting from 2017, we started to develop a Chinese medicine platform to link with e-health. In 2020, there was a pilot scheme, and it was put to use in 2022. We have to take it step by step. Currently, about 500 TCM practitioners have been using the EC Connect, which connects with e-health. At the same time, we are aware that a lot of TCM practitioners use their own software. We're now looking into how to link these software with the e-health so that they can have access to information on e-health. Currently, if you're using EC Connect, you can have access to information on e-health. So if you want to see medical information on e-health, if the clinic uses EC Connect, that is doable. Then what's not done is private software. We will look into that to make easy access of information on the e-health to TCM practitioners. Ms. Chen Huoyan, if we are to develop Chinese medicine into an industry, there is a crucial element: manpower. A year and a half ago, there are 3 universities providing relevant training. People have to train for 6 years. Let's look at the salary. For the tripartite Chinese medicine clinics come Training and Research Center. A starting salary is 24,000 to 27,000. Well, for nurses, it's no less than 30,000. Western medicine doctors are 64,000. That's the salary level a year and a half ago. We have some macro perspective and visions, but if the remuneration is not favorable to Chinese medicine doctors, how do you attract people from joining the trade? Your question is not relevant to the question. Anyway, let's see if the Secretary has anything to say. I thank the member for the question. Current remuneration for TCM practitioners is indeed like what Ms. Chen said. Well, in the 18 clinics cum research center, the salary level is set by relevant organization. Every year there is an annual adjustment. The government will closely monitor the situation. Indeed, there is no proper salary scale and career progression. With the setting up of the Chinese Medicine Hospital, it will be conducive to formulating a salary scale as well as career progression. We are now in negotiation with the sector. This is an important area in the blueprint. Well, apart from the TCM practitioners, there is also pharmacists in Chinese medicine. We look forward to progress. Dr. Junius Ho. Thank you. In terms of Chinese medicine, when it comes to research, testing, training, exchanges, if we are minded to do these things, would there be policies to help single prescription, complex prescriptions of Chinese medicine? Well, I think in the private sector, they are doing much better. Would you enhance cooperation with them, because that is very important? I thank the member for the question. Of course, we will enhance cooperation. We respect the sector and we thank them for the help in the development over the years. They are ahead of us. Of course, we will actively communicate with them. They will take this step forward and we will help them. There are some good companies and good research results. They are our valued partners. They may be the leaders to take the industry to enter the international market. Thank you. Professor Chen Wing-Kwang. I'd like to declare that I am the chairperson of the Chinese Medicine Development Council, and I'm also a member of the Chinese Medicine Council. I do support informatization and digitalization of the Chinese medicine to help them upgrade. However, the progress is currently rather slow. I'd like to follow up on a question asked by Mr. Lee Chen-keung. Access to information on e-health. Well, it only covers Western medicine, but starting from the end of March last year, there is access to Chinese medicine clinical data. Currently, with the consent of patients, Chinese TCM practitioners can have access to the e-health to get CM clinical data. Will the government expedite the pace to remove barriers between Chinese and Western medicine so that access to record will be easier, so that there will indeed be informatization, which is conducive to the development of Chinese and Western medicine? Mr. Chen, you have already asked the question. Thank you. Mr. Chen is right. The setting up of the e-health is for information sharing, data sharing. That is, if a patient has taken certain medicine or have had some tests done, the information will be accessible to other practitioners. Linking up Chinese medicine and Western medicine data is one of our goals. It seems that it's taken a long time for access at the end of March. Before we do that, we have to standardize Chinese medicine terminology. We have spent a lot of time to talk with the sector, with joint reference with terms used on the mainland before we can standardize the terms and implement access to e-health. We will definitely expedite the pace. Mr. Chen Hokfeng, are you there? Would you please lower your prop because I can't see you? When you speak, you can take out the prop, but before you do that, please don't do so.
Yeah.
Question 5. The Honorable Chen Hokfeng. At present, Tongchong Road is the only road that links North and South Lantau, and South Lantau Road is the only road connecting various places of South Lantau. Any traffic incident on these two roads will have a serious impact on the traffic on Lantau Island. It is learned that on the 24th of last month, a traffic accident on South Lantau Road paralyzed traffic in the area for nearly 4 hours. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Given that some members of the local community have relayed to me that during the consultations conducted on major infrastructure projects such as the Hong Kong International Airport and the Khao Yi Chau Artificial Islands, the government has promised to synchronize the overall traffic and transport network linking North and South Lantau in order to achieve a win-win situation. But so far, the government has not constructed any new road to connect Tung Chung with Mui Wo and Tai O. Whether the government has given the Islands District Council or IDC an account of the reasons for not implementing the relevant developments. If so, of the details. 2. Given that last year the government put forward a proposal to construct 2 tunnels and 1 viaduct on Lantau Island to connect Mui Wo and Siu Ho Wan and to connect Shek Pik with Tai Ho Road, etc., of the implementation timetable for the aforesaid proposal, whether the government will report the relevant progress to IDC on a regular basis. And 3. Whether it will construct a traffic and transport network linking North and South Lantau and looping around Lantau Island with Tung Chung as the center. If so, of the timetable and whether it has assessed the difficulties that may be encountered in the implementation of such proposal. Under Secretary for Development. President, the member's question relates to the traffic and transport network on Lantau, in particular the connection between the south and northern part of Lantau. After consulting the Transport and Logistics Bureau, the Civil Engineering and Development Department, and Transport Department, my reply is as follows. The government has all along consulted the Island District Council on Development Projects on Lantau Island. Recently, in February 2019, the CE and ED consulted the Islands District Council on the study on artificial islands in the central waters. The government has decided to press ahead with the 100-hectare Khao Yi Chau artificial islands, and the traffic and transport planning is such that there will be strategic transport infrastructure to connect various development areas covering Hong Kong Island, Khao Yi Chau artificial islands, North Lantau, and NT West. The southern part of Lantau, which is positioned as a rural and conservation area, is not included in the network. We fully understand that at the meeting, there were district councillors who proposed developing roads that link up North and South Lantau. The representative from the Development Bureau said at the meeting that the CNDD was carrying out a study on traffic and transport and capacity to receive visitors for Lantau. The purpose of the study is to look at the traffic and transport connection needs, in particular that between North and South Lantau, and to make recommendations to improve the situation. The second part of my reply is CNDD completed the above-mentioned study in mid-2022 and also reported to the Development Panel of the Council, the Lantau Development Advisory Committee, and the Traffic and Transport Committee of IDC.
According to the study, Tongchong Road is the only vehicular road connecting North and South Lantau. Should there be a serious incident, as the one mentioned by Mr. Chen, there will be serious traffic disruption. Taking into account factors such as the road network's ability to cope with emergencies, traffic safety, and construction costs, we propose in the study that there should be improvements to the western and southern part of Lantau so as to improve the north-south connection of Lantau. The recommendations include the following. For the eastern part of Lantau, we propose to build a new road tunnel connecting Mui Wo and Discovery Bay, or to build a new tunnel connecting Mui Wo in the south and Siho Wan in the north. Now, for the western part of Lantau, we propose to build a new road tunnel connecting Shepik in the south and Tai O Road in the north, or building road viaducts to cover part of the road sections on Kangshan Road, which has a sharp bends and a steep gradient. And we also propose to consider improving the old Tongchong Road in the central part of Lantau. The proposals are included in the annex to my reply. In May this year, that is very soon, the CNDD will start a feasibility study to further explore the feasibility of the above-mentioned options and to decide on the best ones. That would include a preliminary environment assessment, site investigation, etc. It is expected to be completed in mid-2025. During the study, the government will engage stakeholders in a timely manner, and that would include the IDC and Lantau Development Advisory Committee to engage them and to report to them our findings. Apart from those large-scale improvement projects, the government will continue to carry out road widening and band improvement projects along South Lantau Road, Keongsan Road, and Tai O. They will be of a minor scale. Part 3 of the question. The South Lantau have a number of conservation zones, and the road networks are of a rural standard. Because we have to preserve the tranquility of Lantau, and we have to take into account the road capacity of Lantau. The roads in South Lantau are closed roads. Only vehicles with a valid Lantau closed road permit can use those roads. Now, for the average daily traffic flow in the roads on Lantau South, they're only less than half of its design capacity. Take into account that they still have spare capacity, and the overall planning strategy of development in the north and conservation in the south, there is no justification for constructing large-scale traffic infrastructure or road network that link up the whole of Lantau other than the options I just mentioned. Having said so, we expect the options outlined in Part 2 of my reply to improve traffic connection substantially between North and South Lantau. Currently, we'll focus on identifying the most feasible and appropriate option, hoping that they can be implemented as early as possible. Mr. Chen Hock-Fung, President, in 1997, when the airport was constructed, when the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge was consulted, and then when there was the consultation of Lantau Tomorrow, we were told that the traffic connection between North and South Lantau will be improved. It's been more than 3 decades, and the reply I got today is that we can only have findings of the feasibility study in mid-2025. My question is, when will works start? But then your reply was the feasibility study could only be completed in mid-2025. Can you tell us when the 2 tunnels and one viaduct can be completed? Secretary, as I mentioned, the feasibility study will start next month. It will prepare for the construction in the future. Now, the timetable is after the feasibility study and when we can decide on the right options in mid-2025, then we can come up with a package of options. Still, we are still focusing on the western and eastern part of Lantau. Hopefully, we can obtain funding for the works for commencement at once. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, President. My question is, at weekends, Tai O is very crowded and local residents dare not travel to the urban areas for fear that they won't be able to return home the same day. Sometimes it would take them 5 hours. Now with easing of the epidemic, we have to cope with the needs of local visitors as well as residents. There are also tourists. Shouldn't we reassess the TNT needs when it comes to that of Tai Ho? Secretary, President, the Transport Department will keep an eye on the traffic demand by sea and by road and also the current traffic flow. Now, take sea traffic to Tai O as an example. We have regularized some short trips, boat trips. Now, when it comes to improvement to our roads, now for works of a larger scale, we have to wait for the completion of the feasibility study. But for smaller scale improvements, a major road sections on Lantau will continue to proceed. As for public transport, the TD will provide information and enhance trips to follow up. Mr. Kenneth Lau, President, the government has yet to implement the tunnel that link up Mui Wo and Siu Ho Wan and also the tunnel between Shek Pik and Siu Ho Wan. Well, the roads on Lantau haven't been improved for many years, and I think the traffic between Tung Chung Road and South Lantau Road should be improved. Right now, it is just a dual-lane traffic, and when there is a traffic incident or when under inclement weather, the situation is bad. I don't know when the two tunnels and viaducts can be constructed. Can there be widening improvement works for South Island Road and Tung Chung Road, or perhaps a new road should be built between Sunny Bay and Mui Wo to cope with the future development of Lantau? Secretary. Now, looking ahead, the proposals covering the north and south of Lantau are on the table and will focus on a feasibility study of these options. Mr. Lau asked whether there is any room to improve Tung Chung Road, which is in the on central Lantau. We considered improving the road once, but then it cuts across a country park and the terrain is hilly. So in 2019, Tung Chung Road has seen some road improvements. Now, there is limited scope for major improvements to Tung Chung Road now. Now, if we can improve connection between South and North Lantau, we have to work on the West and East Lantau. Whether we are talking about the CNEDD and Highways Department, while they're waiting for the feasibility study, they are carrying out minor improvement works such as straightening some bends. Honestly speaking, they are not large-scale strategic improvement, but they can be of some assistance given the constraints, and they will be carried out in the form of minor works. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, President. Improvement to South Lantau Road. Of course, conservation is an important consideration, but then for the part from South Lantau Road to Kengshan, we not just talk about vehicles. There are also cattle and bikes. At weekends, there are a lot of conflicts between different road users and also dangerous situation. So we're asking for improvements in the short term to deal with the conflicts between bikes and cattle and vehicles. Secretary. Under Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your question. Have you clipped on your microphone? Bear with me, President. As said in the main reply, the TD and Highways Department have worked very hard to improve the traffic safety and capacity of road steer. From January 2021 to 2023, at 57 locations along South Lantau Road and 23 spots on Tung Chung Road, we have carried out improvement projects to improve road safety. To improve South Lantau Road, the TD and Highways Department along South Lantau Road, Kengshan Road, and Lantau Road have improved the sharp bends of the roads, and we've added signage to remind motorists that there are hazards on the road and they should drive safely. The TD and Highways Department are planning some road widenings and bend improvement projects along South Lantau Road and Kengshan Road and Tile Road. Hopefully, these minor improvement projects can improve road safety. Thank you. Dr. Junius Ho. President, so from what I heard, the administration plans to do something in West Lantau to link up Mui Wo and Discovery Bay, as well as Mui Wo and Siu Ho Wan. I think these are good suggestions. Because 1,000 hectares of land will be formed to the north of Lantau. The administration should take the opportunity to improve the road network on the island. Now we have got plans for the east, and in the west you have to consider conservation. In fact, conservation and development are not mutually exclusive. Now when we have better roads, even birds can fly freer. So my question is, when it comes to site investigation and feasibility study, they are proceeding too slowly. We have to wait until mid-2025 before we can see a report. Can you compress the timetable and tell us when we can have some decision on the options, please? Secretary, I mentioned the feasibility study to start in March, and it will end in mid-2025. It would include preliminary environmental assessment and ground investigation, and also geotechnical studies of slopes. We will try to compress the timetable as far as possible. Now, because there are road sections in the west and in the east covered, and if we have completed study of these roads, perhaps they can be implemented first. If there is any room for compressing the timetable, we'll try to do so. Mr. Dominic Lee, We are improving the traffic network of Lantau, but there are old areas on Lantau as well. Has the administration considered opening up some of the closed roads to further improve the traffic? Undersecretary for Transport and Logistics. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Lee for his question. As said by the Secretary for Development, a large portion of Lantau South is for conservation, and the road network is of rural design, and the capacity is lower than that of standard roads. In 1970s, the Transport Department zoned roads in South Island closed roads for conservation purpose and to ensure sustainable development of the site there. Now, for all the roads on South Island, South Lantau, and are closed roads, that doesn't mean that all vehicles are banned. For vehicles who have a valid Lantau closed road permit can use the roads there. The motorists must comply with the permit conditions. In 2022, the TD issued about 22,500 valids. Some of them are regular permits, some provisional. Residents and business operators in Lantau South usually can have a regular and long-term permit. For those who need to work and be in South Lantau for a specific purpose, they can also apply for a provisional or temporary license. And so for those who need to drive their own private vehicles, we're able to satisfy their demand. The question is whether outsiders can drive their own vehicles in South Lantau. We have taken into account the road capacity and also the rural environment. We don't want too many private vehicles to drive into areas with that are ecologically sensitive. People may want to go to these places for sightseeing, for leisure. We hope that they can use public transport. We don't want too many outsiders using the roads in South Lantau. Having said so, we understand that many outsiders would like to drive their own cars into South Lantau, so we have this driving on Lantau Island scheme. We have a small daily quota for application so the people can drive into South Lantau. Thank you.
Last question, seeking an oral reply, Mr. Adrian Petro-Ho. Thank you, President. Over the past few years, the economy of Hong Kong has been hard hit by the epidemic, and the expenses involved in anti-epidemic and relief measures have amounted to over $600 billion. Some analysts have pointed out that excluding the amounts of the Housing Reserve and the Future Fund plowed back and the proceeds from the issuance of bonds, the government has recorded fiscal deficits for 3 years, and the fiscal deficit of the current financial year is estimated to be over $100 billion. According to Article 107 of the Basic Law, Hong Kong shall follow the principle of keeping the expenditure within the limits of revenues in drawing up its budget and strive to achieve a fiscal balance and avoid deficits. Their view is that the government should increase stable and recurrent revenue, and betting duty is one of such revenue. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. As the government raised the betting duty and authorized betting on football matches in 2003 and amended the betting duty ordinance in 2006 to convert the betting duty on horse race bets from turnover-based to a tax on net stake receipts. Of the respective betting turnovers of and revenues from betting duty on football betting, betting on horse races, cash sweeps, and lotteries, i.e. Mark 6 in each of the years from 2003 and to 2009. 2. Whether the authorities will conduct a study on raising the betting duty with a view to increasing the stable revenue of the governments from betting duty. And 3. Whether it will, by drawing reference from the experience of neighboring regions in issuing additional betting licenses, conduct a study on suitably increasing the number of licenses for conducting betting on football matches under Section 66I of the Betting Duty Ordinance, with a view to increasing revenue from betting duty, if so, the details, if no, the reasons for that. Thank you. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. President, the government has all along been adhering to the principles of exercising fiscal prudence, keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue and committing resources as and when justified and needed in public finance management. We strive to achieve a fiscal balance over a period of time. In the face of the epidemic and economic downturn in the past few years, we adopted an expansionary fiscal policy, implementing counter-cyclical measures to ease the pressure of economic downturn and to relieve hardships in society. In the long run, with limited financial resources, we need to manage public finances prudently when allocating resources for taking forward necessary initiatives so as to maintain fiscal robustness and sustainability, and to maintain financial strength to prepare for known and unknown situations and needs. The government's policy is not to encourage gambling. However, since there is a certain degree of public demand for gambling, the government allows legal and authorized means of gambling in a limited and regulated manner to address public demand, so as to prevent the public from turning to illegal gambling. The government has authorized the Hong Kong Jockey Club, or the HKJC, to conduct horse race betting, football betting, and lotteries under the Betting Duty Ordinance Cap 106 to achieve its policy objective of combating illegal gambling through the provision of lawful and authorized betting outlets. At the same time, betting duty is charged for the above-mentioned authorized betting activities under the ordinance. At present, duties on betting on horse races and betting on football matches are charged on net stake receipts. The duty rates for betting on horse race are from 72.5% to 75% on a progressive basis, and 50% for football matches. Betting duty for lotteries are charged as 25% on the amount of proceeds. In consultation with the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau, my reply to the three parts of Mr. Ho's question is as follows. 1. The government increased betting duty rates to increase revenue in year 2003. The duty on exotic horse racing bets was increased from 19% to 20%. In the same year, to combat illegal football gambling, the government also authorized football betting by way of licensing the HKJC to conduct football betting in Hong Kong. To cope with the challenges from illegal bookmakers and to enhance regulation of betting on horse races, the government implemented in 2006 a series of reforms to the betting duty system, including conversion of betting duty on horse race bets from turnover-based to a tax on net stake receipts, that is, betting proceeds minus payout, and introduction of a progressive marginal duty system. According to the information of the HKJC, the total proceeds of betting on horse races, betting on football matches and lotteries increased from $86.9 billion in year 2003 and 4 to $116.9 billion in year 2009 to 10. The proceeds of betting on horse races, betting on football matches and lotteries of Hong Kong JC between those years are summarized in Table 1. As for betting duty, the revenue from betting duty increased from $11.6 billion in year 2003 to 4 to $12.8 billion in year 2009 to 10. The revenue from duty on betting on football matches, betting on horse races and lotteries between those years is summarized in Table 2. Part 2 of the question. To ensure fiscal sustainability, the government would look into different measures to increase revenue without affecting people's livelihood and maintaining the policy of low tax rates as far as possible. We will take into account the fiscal position of the government, the economic environment of Hong Kong, and the impacts on people from different walks of life in the community, and give prudent consideration to the proposal. 3. The gambling policies in different jurisdictions around the world are not the same, and the betting duty regimes also vary. Therefore, the licensing regime of betting activities, including the number of betting licenses issued in other jurisdictions, may not apply to Hong Kong. As for Hong Kong, our policy has all along been not to encourage gambling. As per established practice, the license for football betting is only issued by the government under the ordinance to one organization, namely HKJC, to prevent competition amongst operators, which could stimulate demand for gambling. Having considered that the prevailing practice is consistent with our gambling policy of not encouraging gambling and has all along been effective, we have no plan at the moment to increase the number of licenses for football betting. Thank you, President. Mr. Adrian Ho, I thank the government for its reply. According to the statistics mentioned in the reply, since the government increased betting duty rates and improved the regime, tax revenue has increased from this source, and also the betting proceeds for the HKJC has been continuously on the rise. It didn't affect the gambling demand. In year 2020, according to the Jockey Club, the charity trust and also the investment trust altogether has a reserve of some 135 billion Hong Kong dollars. Now, this is a massive sum of money. Can the government exercise supervision on the usage of this fund? Secretary, thank you. Now, the Hong Kong Jockey Club is a private organization. It is not a statutory organization. Under the betting duty ordinance, license is issued to the HKJC for operating gambling activities so as to regulate these activities. The regulation does not apply to the financial arrangements of the HKJC, including charity. Now, very shortly, the financial secretary will deliver his budget speech. Now, there are different aspirations and there are some proposals to raise the betting duty rates to increase government revenue. I also noticed that the Hong Kong Jockey Club has issued a statement in reply of that. As I said, we need to take a comprehensive consideration of the Hong Kong economy as a whole, the government's fiscal reserve, as well as its impact on people's livelihood. We will take a prudent consideration of the proposal. Reverend Peter Kuhn, President, the Hong Kong Jockey Club is one of the largest charities in Hong Kong. Last year, the charity trust has donated some $6.6 billion to society. If the betting duty rate is increased, it may affect the Hong Kong Jockey Club's financial ability to support its philanthropic activities. So if that's the case, will the government enhance its expenditure on welfare? Secretary, thank you. As I mentioned, there are two parts, who we are getting our revenue from and how we are spending our money. In terms of expenditure, we have a well-established system. Now, where are we getting our money from? So one of the major sources is, of course, taxation from the Jockey Club. As I've mentioned in my reply, during budget consultation, there have been a lot of views about raising betting duty. Of course, we have to consider the efficacy of the proposal. Now, once this money is given to the government, it will enter the government's main coffer, and there will not be a dedicated item for spending the money. We have an established set of mechanisms to use the money, including the Finance Committee. Thank you. Mr. Porge, President, if you look at the question itself, and also the follow-up question from Mr. Adrian Ho, well, I thought the question is about the income from betting duty. But then the follow-up question was about how we should conduct oversight on the operation and the financial decision of the Jockey Club itself. So are we digressing from the main question? Now, the Secretary said the government is trying to combat illegal bookmaking and also discourage gambling. So it doesn't seem the matter is about taxation or the betting duty rates. Now, paragraph 2 of the main reply, the Secretary didn't reply directly whether the government would increase the betting duty rate. However, in paragraph 2, it says it would take into account the fiscal position of the government and give priority to the impact on people's life as well as the community. Now, there are many grassroots people to whom gambling is their lifeline. It is like their spiritual food. So with the tough economic situation and tough livelihood right now, is it the right time to consider increasing betting duty rates? Secretary. As I said, there are a lot of considerations to be taken into account in terms of public coffer. We have to consider the revenue as well as the impacts of the measures on different walks of life. Now, let me give you an example to illustrate how we strike a balance between these factors. Between year 2019 and 21, we have suspended charges of some government services for 2 years. Now, different departments have laid down the fees items on the users pay principle, and there are reviews ongoing. Now, first of all, we consider resuming administrative fees which will not affect people's livelihood. For example, the fee for getting a copy of a government's plans and also digital copies of these government plans. These will not affect people's livelihoods, so we are resuming these fees. Concerning the betting duty rates and also other issues, we apply the same principle. We want to increase our revenue, but we would consider, in reaching that objective, what will the impact on people's livelihood be? This is our established practice, and for the way forward, we will continue to adopt this principle in considering different proposals, including today's proposal. Dr. Johnny Ng. President, the HKSAR government in year 2003 issued a license for football betting. The objective is to regulate the gambling activity and combat illegal betting. Now, there are lots of illegal bookmakers overseas, and many people are betting online overseas. Last year, more than 550,000 people engaged in illegal gambling overseas, involving a profit of $14 billion. Now, the licensed football betting activities in Hong Kong are facing more and more competition. So will the government study whether more betting items would be included besides football and horses? Say, for example, NBA and Formula One. It can increase the attractiveness of the HKJC's gambling activities and also combat illegal betting activities as well as increasing revenue for the government. Which official would take this question? The other secretary of the HYAB. Thank you. As we have mentioned, we do not encourage gambling. At the same time, we offer a regulated and legal channel for gambling. We want to meet gambling demand from society to discourage illegal bookmaking. Now, we have to keep up in time in terms of our regulatory regime so as to prevent illegal gambling. Now, if these following situations occur, we would explore whether we should extend the scope of legalized gambling. First, if there is a sustaining and huge demand for that kind of gambling activity. Two, at present, the demand is met with illegal channel. Three, even if we allocate more resources to step up enforcement, it cannot address the issue. And lastly, the proposal to regulate the kind of gambling activity is widely supported by society. According to what the information we have, as well as our discussion with the police, there is no need at present to extend the scope of legalized gambling activities right now. We will keep in mind the situation and consider whether we should extend the scope of legalized gambling to combat illegal gambling. Dr. Teck Chi Yuen, President, the Jockey Club earns a profit from gambling activities and allocates parts of the revenue to charitable causes. This is social responsibility. Now, in answering Mr. Adrian Ho's follow-up question, the Secretary said a lot of considerations must be taken into account. If the betting duty rate is increased and then the Jockey Club is earning less, will it reduce the amount of the Jockey Club spends on charitable causes? Well, should the government set an amount for the HKJC as a compulsory expenditure on welfare so that the HKJC is taking more social responsibility? Secretary. President, in my reply, I have addressed the question partially. In terms of the regulation on the Jockey Club, it is an independent private organization. A license is issued under the betting duty ordinance for hosting gambling on horse races and football gambling activities. It does not involve the financial arrangements of the Jockey Club. I understand where Dr. Teck was coming from. He belongs to the social welfare sector, so he's worried whether any measures would reduce the amount of expenditure on social welfare. Of course, we adopt a policy-driven approach in any measures, and then we would allocate resources in the budget. Now, the focus of this question is betting duty. In my reply, I have made it clear that we have to strike a balance between different factors and also its impact on people's livelihood and other factors as well. These balances and different factors of consideration during our budget consultation, we have heard all these views already. So under the leadership of the Financial Secretary in drafting the budget, we will take comprehensive consideration. Mr. Peter Shiu, thank you. Now, the Jockey Club is the largest charitable organization in Hong Kong. It provides resources to a lot of NGOs, so we have to ensure that the operation of the Hong Kong Jockey Club is protected. Many members have recently been attacking the Hong Kong Jockey Club because they want to increase the government's revenue. Well, I understand where they're coming from. They are not ill-intended. There are lots of, on the contrary, well, if you raise the betting duty, it would reduce the HKJC's financial capability because we are not just receiving wages from Hong Kong. We receive wages from overseas as well. So compared with other jurisdictions, is our betting duty rate higher or lower? And the point is we have to ensure that the HKJC is operating normally. Secretary, President, in our consideration, we make reference to the gambling policies of other jurisdictions. I must say that the policies vary a lot globally, so there are different gambling and betting duty regimes. For other jurisdictions' situation and the number of licenses, they may not be directly applicable to Hong Kong. Say, for example, the football betting duty rate is 50%. In Hong Kong, it is higher than other places. UK, 15%, Singapore, 25%. Now, for some jurisdictions, the betting duty rate is based on turnover, some on betting proceeds minus payout. So there are lots of variances. So there is a saying that, I think it is a quote from a French financial minister. He said that taxation is like plucking plumes from a goose. Well, you can not pluck all the plumes from the goose. So we have to strike a balance between all stakeholders. Thank you.
So 法例修
Members' motion on the period for amending subsidiary legislation. A proposed resolution under the Interpretation and General Clauses Ordinance to extend the period for amending the Minimum Wage Ordinance, Amendment of Schedule 3 Notice 2023, and the Employment Ordinance, Amendment of 9th Schedule Notice 2023, which was laid on the table of this Council on the 18th of January 2023. I now call upon Mr. Ma Fung Kwok to move the motion. Mr. President, I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. I propose the question to you that Mr. Ma Fung Kwok's motion be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the motion passed. Members' motion with no legislative effect. Dr. Ngan Man Yu will move a motion on improving the policies on foreign domestic helpers. Two members will move amendments to the motion. This Council will proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the amendments. Later, I will first call upon Dr. Ngan Man Yu to speak and move the motion. Then I will call upon Mr. Lee Chen-keung and Ms. Judy Chan to speak in sequence, but they may not move the amendments at this stage. The joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. I now call upon Dr. Ngan Man Yu to speak and move the motion. Thank you, Mr. President. Now, in relation to the policies on foreign domestic helpers, we had another debate last year. The original motion with amendments were passed. Why is it that 1 year on, this year, I'm moving a similar motion? Why do I persist? That's because a year on, we haven't seen any improvement in government policies. We are disappointed. In the 70s, some 20,000 foreign domestic helpers worked in Hong Kong, but in a recent peak, we have some 400,000 foreign domestic helpers in Hong Kong. Let's say for 1 in 3 households, there is 1 foreign domestic helpers. We're talking about 1/3 of a population having a foreign domestic helper at home. It's a livelihood issue, and this is pain in the neck for many. As I do community work, I very often receive inquiries from members of the public. They air grievances and lodge complaints. And in fact, the Consumer Council on a yearly basis published the 10 top news relating to consumers, and the foreign domestic helper issue hit the headline again this year. So it's a common problem facing many people. In light of the situation in 2021-2022, we conducted surveys in 2 consecutive years, and we collected views from 1,600 employers. In October 2021, the Family Committee of the DAB also held a meeting to conduct an in-depth analysis of the issue of foreign domestic helpers. There are 3 major issues. First, a mismatch. Basically, it's like a blind or arranged marriage. In fact, last month, in the TV program Scoop, some employers tried to find a foreign domestic helper who would be meticulous and who would work hard. But after the foreign domestic helper had arrived, the helper refused to cook for the family. She even used a knife to threaten the family members. So despite paying medical expenses for the physical checkup of the foreign domestic helper, the family in the end lost the help. So it was a pain in the neck. Next, unscrupulous intermediaries. Many employment agencies provide a schedule of fees, but according to our survey, slightly over 50% of employers said that they encountered the EAs with a clear schedule of fees. Some 30% of employers said they did not have a schedule of fees. And during the epidemic, there was a shortage of foreign domestic helpers. This is still fresh in our minds. Many employers were aggrieved. On arrival, the foreign domestic helpers were required to live in a quarantine hotel, not to mention other miscellaneous fees. And the employers paid some $20,000 extra to the employment agency. But in the end, despite paying that hefty sum, The foreign domestic helper did not arrive after 2 years. And the third problem is that in terms of the government's policies on foreign domestic helpers, the government departments work in silo, and if you have a question to ask, you don't know which department to go for. You don't know whether you should go to the Immigration Department, Labor Department, or the Consumer Council. Last year, we made this submission to the Chief Executive. We advocated on improvement measures on foreign domestic helper policies. There are 13 recommendations. I think the government should start with the easiest ones and improve the policies. The more difficult ones include improving the standard employment contract and addressing the ambiguities. For example, some foreign domestic helpers are eventually found to be medically unfit for work after the contract has been signed. The problem is that the standard employment contract only stipulates that the foreign domestic helper should be fit for work, and a lot of details are missing. In order to address the ambiguities, now there should be a clear definition on medically fit for work. For example, the items of the medical examination should be clearly spelled out in the contract. There are also other ambiguous clauses in the contract. For example, when should or under what circumstances should an employer be responsible for the return passage to and from their home countries, and whether it is possible to pay the help in lieu of the statutory leave. Many employers are unclear about these details. Perhaps an attachment should be drawn up for the purpose of clearing the ambiguities. As for other matters such as charging excessive commission by EAs, the Code of Practice for Employment Agencies should be revised so that medical examination and fees for passage, etc., should be included in the contract, and in the service agreement, the payment arrangement terms should also be made out clearly, together with refund arrangements, and a standard form should be adopted for easy compliance by the EAs. Different government departments are responsible in a fragmented manner for foreign domestic helpers, and members of the public are unsure whom to turn to. The government should make reference to the Property Management Authority and the Tourism Industry Authority by setting up an FDH authority so that the centralized approach can be taken on licensing and regulatory matters. A committee should be set up comprising employee representatives, FDH unions, so on and so forth, so that if need be, the committee can help disseminate messages and discuss relevant matters. In the past 2 years, because of the epidemic, the government made changes to the FDH policies. Many EAs were ignorant about the changes. The government should make sure that messages are disseminated in a timely manner and in a clear manner to avoid misunderstanding. I hope that this term of government will listen to the voice of the people and start preparing for the establishment of an FDH authority and draw up long-term policies on foreign domestic helpers. I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. I now propose a question to you that Dr. Ngan Man Yu's motion be passed. Mr. Lee Chen-keung.
Thank you, President. In this chamber, we have discussed issues and topics related to FDH time and again. It goes to show that the policies are far from satisfactory. Let me tell you a sad story of an FDH employer. Well, very often an employer would rely on the service of the agency, and many problems can arise out of their employment of FDH. my fellow Liberal Party member, Mr. Frank Yik, Mr. Yik Chi-ming will talk about other issues. Well, actually, there's a shortage of FTH, and therefore the FTH who terminate their contracts prematurely are in great demand. But the government has no support service for employers. They are not instructed on how to find a good FTH. And we don't know whether an agency is a licensed or just an intermediary for another agency. They rely on a word of mouth recommendation of fans and relatives. Therefore, these agencies are unruly and difficult to control. Many families have told me that before they see the FTH, they will have to pay tens of thousands of dollars in agency fee. And the fees and charges are not transparent. And many employers don't know what those fees and charges are for. And they have to wait for up to 9 months before they actually have the FTH coming to Hong Kong. And they have to reimburse a lot of fees and expenditures such as traveling and traveling expenses, etc. If they don't pay up, they will not get the FTH. And if they discontinue with the process of employment, the fees will not be repaid. And our system encourages FTH to terminate their contracts prematurely so that they can work for another employer and get a higher income. So these employers are at a loss as to what to do. The government should ensure that the agencies should follow all the employment agencies' regulations and set up a foreign domestic helper licensing and a merit point system. There should be a website with a blacklist of job hopping FTH, and also more importantly, the fees and charges of agencies should be made public. With the shortage of FTH, many unscrupulous agencies have seized the opportunity to make a bigger gain, bigger profit. They would market their FTH as very good and quality FTH, saying that they are very skillful and very presentable. But the employers can only rely on the 10-minute video conferencing material to understand what the FTH would perform. They don't know whether they are telling the truth or lies. They can only rely on the series provided by the agency, but they are not certain about the truthfulness of the information. Therefore, I think the government should set up a skills testing center for FTH so that they should go through testing household techniques and skill tests before employment. If the FTH cannot reach a certain standard of skills, the agencies should be required to provide training. Actually, this is just a very simple and modest request from the employers. They want the FTH to comply with the contract in substance and in spirit, and they would work for 2 years. But now it's very difficult to see this realized. It's actually, to many of them, a pipe dream. The government, once again, I would like to urge the government to make sure that the agencies comply with the regulations, and also to ensure the interests enjoyed by the employers under the legislation are protected. I hope members will support my amendment. Miss Judy Chan. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Yan Men-yu for moving this motion on improving the policies on FTH. Topics surrounding FTH have been discussed many times in this chamber, but the government policies on the same have not been improved. They have been the same for years. As a result, there are many unscrupulous agencies and misbehaving FEH affecting the interests of their employers. With an aging society, we are relying more and more on FDH to care for our children and our elderly family members. We have to make sure that the Hong Kong families should have the ease of mind in employing FDH so that more of our citizens can join the workforce. We have a workforce of FDH numbered more than 400,000, and in recent years the number has dropped a bit because of the epidemic, and now epidemic is a thing of the past and we are on the path of recovery. Many families will require FDH, and the number will go up once again, I'm sure. So it's time to improve and update our FDH policies. Over the years, the agencies make use of some gray area in our regulation, and as a result, the aggrieved families have nowhere to turn to for their difficulties. Some FDH would do job hopping. Some would not do their job properly, and some even resign to get a better job, so that their employers may have to resign as a result, so that their family members can be cared for. Although we don't have any regulation about job hopping, and the unscrupulous agencies are not properly monitored and regulated. So we don't have a healthy environment in the employment of FDH. And it would affect the attractiveness of Hong Kong as a destination for FDH. If we cannot attract FDH to come to work in Hong Kong, the families which require their services will be affected. At present, we have the so-called standard contract approach. The model contract has been in use for decades. And unscrupulous agencies would incite FDH to make use of the loopholes for better gain. I'm very disappointed by the inaction of the government so far. At present, both the FDH and their employers are losing out in terms of their interests, affecting hundreds of thousands of families and FDH. We are in a vicious cycle. We have to better protect the interests on both sides. Measures should be taken. There should be a better platform to provide support for employers and FDH, and we should improve the legislation and regulations, and also to raise the threshold of entry for employment agencies, and to whip out irregularities and malpractices, so that we can enhance the service quality of agencies. With these remarks, I hope members can support my amendment.
Secretary for Labour and Welfare. Madam Deputy, I'm grateful to Dr. Ann for moving the motion, as well as Mr. Lee Chun Keung and Ms. Judy Chen for proposing the amendments, so that we can better understand members' views. At the same time, I get the opportunity to talk about the government's policies on foreign domestic helpers, as well as our work in protecting the interests of FDH